okay with everyone. So good afternoon, everyone joining us from Morocco, and good morning to those of you joining us from the US. I'm Mariam Hammam. I'm the Community Engagement Officer at MACICI, the Moroccan American Commission for Educational and Cultural Exchange. So as some of you might know, we are currently celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Commission, and we have started a series of webinars. So this will be our 4th installment, and we will be diving into Morocco's rich cultural Jewish history and Morocco's new renewed ties with its Moroccan Judeo diaspora. So we have Fulbrighters, alumni, and current Fulbrighters on our panel. I will let them introduce themselves, and then we can start with our topic. So Natalie, if you would like to start.
Hello, everyone, and thanks so much, Mariam. It's great to be here. My name is Natalie Bernstien. I am a PhD student in Jewish history at UCLA. I did Fulbright in Morocco in 2018, and it's great to be back, at least virtually, with you all.
Jessie?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Mariam. My name is Jessie. I use she, her pronouns. I am a 5th year graduate student at UCLA in anthropology. So it took me a second to remember that. And yeah, I was fortunate enough to receive a US student program grant from Fulbright way back in 2015 before I began my graduate work. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you both for joining us today, and thank you for the introductions. If you would like, so just for everyone watching, our moderator is having some technical issues, so we will proceed with this as a conversation until the issue is hopefully resolved. So if you would like both to start with Morocco's Jewish history.
Yeah, I'm actually the moderator, so I'm happy to proceed, and I'll go ahead and ask Jessie the questions I was hoping to ask, and then hopefully Ikbale can join and share her perspective too. So yeah, I guess getting started, Jessie, before getting to the question of diaspora, I'd love to hear from you about how you originally got interested in Moroccan Jewish history, and how your work relates to Moroccan Jewish history in general.
Thanks for the question, Natalie. So I got started, I'd say my interest in it began with Moroccan Jewish history, but instead I was really interested in medieval history, especially medieval Iberian history, history of Al-Andalus. And that's what I studied in undergrad, and what brought me to Morocco first with a Fulbright grant was to explore community-led organizations that helped preserve Andalusian history, culture, and music and food cultures, and a whole bunch of stuff that are really concentrated throughout, especially northern Morocco. And through that experience, I became more and more interested in how Moroccan Jewish history in particular is being preserved and narrated by different actors and institutions. And that's what's kind of brought me to my dissertation project currently, which is really focusing on like how Moroccan Jewish history and heritage is being produced, cultivated, and preserved across community-based to state-run organizations. So that's how I got here. Yeah.
Sounds great. Yeah, how would you say your work, to the extent that it does, relates to the idea of the Moroccan Jewish diaspora?
Yeah, I mean, diaspora is a big nebulous term. And I don't know if we have time in this webinar to kind of define what we mean by diaspora here too, but certainly, you know, I would say my work relates to the Moroccan Jewish diaspora because many Moroccan Jews across the world are involved in these projects of preservation of Jewish heritage in the country, and also are carrying out projects both within Morocco and outside of Morocco. So I would say that's kind of the most direct link. But of course, anybody who studies Moroccan Jewish history must also study various diasporas, right? There's the diaspora from, you know, biblical Israel, right? And then there's diasporas from what became the state of Morocco to other places like Latin America, Europe, and elsewhere. So I think that, yeah, for anybody studying Moroccan Jewish history, there's an element of the diaspora always present.
For sure. I guess in terms of what you mentioned regarding cultural preservation and diaspora, how do you see Moroccan Jewish history as unique in the region as far as Jewish history in the Middle East and North Africa, and what overlaps do you see in this history?
These are great big questions. And being the only one on the panel, I feel very on the spot. And I'm sure Natalie as well, you could comment too. I think I steer clear from any sort of totalizing definition of anybody's history, because I think that those can always be picked apart and nuanced, right? I do think there's definitely an infrastructure, like a political economy invested in characterizing Moroccan Jewish history as unique. And we must, I think, as scholars, constantly kind of having question like what are the stakes of saying that Moroccan Jewish history is unique for our contemporary period? Like who would be interested in that sort of narrative? Who is saying it? And I think, of course, you can find a lot of different people with different motivations using that kind of language. I think structurally, of course, I mean, we have one of the only Jewish museums in North Africa or Western Asia in Morocco, right? The Musée du Judeo-Moroccan in Casablanca, which is an incredible space, and incredible for many reasons, including the fact that like it is really the product of members of the Jewish community in Morocco, rather than, I would say, more the product of folks operating outside of the country potentially. And so that I think would be a place to start with. Maybe the uniqueness factor is having a space like that museum, having really extensive support from for example, the Archives du Maroc for the cultivation of the collections of Moroccan Jewish history at the archives to be made available for scholars in the country, which I also think is really special, right? Like because of colonialism, unfortunately, the manuscripts, objects, collections of plenty of communities indigenous to the region are now located outside of the region in the former colonizers' countries. So I think it's special in Morocco as well that there's been a huge institutional effort to make archives related to Jewish people and their histories in Morocco available to scholars, Muslim, Jewish, and otherwise within Morocco. So that's maybe another way in which I would say we're talking about a unique situation. If we compare, for example, immediate neighbors like Algeria and Tunisia, although in Tunisia, I think it's 2017, the Minister of Culture declared that an interest in establishing a Jewish museum, perhaps something similar to what exists in Casablanca today, but I don't think that the actual space has been created. And of course, in Morocco, you even have, proliferation of other similar spaces, not museums necessarily, not archives, but spaces like Beit Dekira and Essaouira, and a pretty big movement for restoration of Jewish sites, be them cemeteries or neighborhoods or other spaces that one might use the adjective to describe as Jewish. So yeah, I hope, did I answer the question? I'm not
No,
sure.
yeah, that was great. Yeah, and I'm also thinking about like connecting it to the question of diaspora. I mean, I think being able to visit, even more so now, but over the past few decades, that's been an opportunity to foster the diaspora and this continued relationship, especially with the question of cultural tourism. I guess getting back into this term of Jewish diaspora, which I know is quite a big term. I'm curious how you think of this idea of Moroccan Jewish diaspora, maybe in comparison to the larger idea of the Moroccan diaspora, the non-Jewish diaspora. Is there a relationship between these two? I guess especially in regards to like where most of these communities who aren't currently in Morocco, where they live. Oh, it looks like Ikbale has joined us.
Ikbale,
Yay. Just in time for a question. Hi, Ikbale.
Please unmute your microphone.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thank you for finally joining. We're glad it worked.
Thank you for waiting. I didn't know this was, yeah, sorry about that. I'm here.
It's okay. Would you like to introduce yourself? And then.
Yes, of course. I'm sorry, I'm just, okay. Hi everyone, I'm Ikbale Bouziane. I'm a current Fulbright Joint Supervision grantee at the University of California, Los Angeles. And I've been doing my PhD research at the University of Ibn Zor in Agadir, and I'm specialized in cultural anthropology. I'm doing research about the Judeo-Muslim cultural encounters in Amazigh oral tradition in both southeast of Morocco and the Sousse region. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for having me here today to discuss the Moroccan Jewish diaspora and the background and history of it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mariam.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here. I had just brought up a question, so not to put you on the spot immediately, but definitely want to hear your thoughts regarding the question of Moroccan Jewish diaspora with its relationship to the Moroccan diaspora in general, the non-Jewish diaspora. Yeah, what are your thoughts on what makes the Jewish diaspora unique, or if there's a relationship? I guess, yeah, especially in regards to where the communities are currently living for those who aren't in Morocco. And Ikbale, Jessie, would love to hear from both of you.
Yeah, like when we speak about the Moroccan Jewish diaspora, we talk about the Moroccan Jews who left, you know, throughout the years, and most of the places they went to were like France, Canada, Israel, the United States. And these are like the countries where there's like a major concentration of Moroccan Jews. When it compares to, I'm sorry, I'm a bit like all over the place because I've been trying to figure out this technical problem. But I'll try. I'll just get myself together and I'll answer the question. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll add on to what Ikbale has already started by saying. Also, I think it really depends on which time period you're talking about, right? There's some really interesting deviations and confluences that even some people might not think about, right? Like the Northern Moroccan Jewish diaspora to Latin America. Well, they were still most of the states in Latin America were still colonized in the 19th century. You also could like go back. I mean, as I said at the beginning of this, I'm a closeted medievalist, and I still very much love to be a fangirl for medieval history. And right, like you could also think about Sephardi I mean, first the Sephardi diaspora from the Iberian Peninsula to Morocco or to North Africa, which also included Muslims. I mean, Muslims and Jews were sometimes expelled at the same time during that period, especially 1492 was an expulsion of Muslims and Jews from the peninsula. And then there were later expulsions that were specific to different religious communities, but that could also be talked about as a confluence of a North African Muslim and Jewish diaspora experiences. And I would say in the contemporary period, like an important maybe factor to keep in mind is differences across like access to what we would maybe call regulated or unregulated migration, right? I'm not familiar with like a large migration of Moroccan Jews either in the colonial period or post-colonial period in which those communities didn't have access to like the papers necessary to make those journeys legally. And I think that is something to keep in mind in terms of experiences within the diaspora, how they might differ based on somebody who has the, you know, privilege of being able to, you know, move in a regulated manner. So yeah.
I'm just adding up on what Jessie said now that I'm in place. I think that the Moroccan Jewish diaspora started with the Union Israélite Universelle schools in Morocco, and when Moroccan Jews started getting access to foreign education, to non-traditional education, and you know, doors of immigration were open to them, to France mainly, and that's when it all started. But that was during the colonial era. But when we talk about the from 1948, you know, to the present day, there were a lot of migratory waves from Morocco, especially of Moroccan Jews to Israel, which was I think that was impacted by the political turmoil in the Middle East in general, and the rise of the Nasserism and other political movements in the Arab world. And of course, we know that the wars between the Arab states and the Israeli state impacted the Moroccan Jewish presence, and because that steered like a lot of violence in some Moroccan communities. And here we're talking about the riots of Oujda and Jarada that happened around 1948, and you know, post the creation of the Israeli state. And a lot of Jewish people, Moroccan Jewish people, were attacked in their home communities. And the idea of Morocco gaining independence and the hopes of the independence of the Moroccan state left Jewish Moroccans with a lot of fears of Islamism taking over, and of them being constantly attacked by their neighbors who are supporting the Palestinian cause. So a lot of these events came into play, and a lot of Moroccan Jews, if I may say, were really impacted by this and by the political developments in the Middle East. And people were stopped, and they were trying to flee and, you know, protect themselves, but the king back then was forced by the Arab League to not allow Moroccan Jews to go and populate the newborn state, which led to, as you said, Jessie, to the occurrence of illegal ways to migrate, and which resulted in like catastrophes of people dying. Like there was this ship that sank on which there were like illegal migrants from Morocco, and then a lot of deals had to be made, and the development of this whole like migratory process of the Moroccan Jews has a lot of history to it. And I think that it's really important to invest in this to see how the Moroccan society or the national identity lost a very big and important tributary of its culture.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess going off of what you're both saying, it's quite hard to pinpoint like a beginning to when there became an existence of a Moroccan Jewish diaspora, because like Jessie said, it really depends on the period that you're looking at. I would say this question has definitely changed in the past few decades, since now the majority of the Moroccan Jewish community lives outside of Morocco. So there's definitely a difference when you look, you know, currently compared to, yeah, before. So I'm curious how, I guess, you know, how this question of diaspora is different now that the majority of Moroccan Jews are outside of Morocco, and also connecting this with, like, how does studying the Moroccan Jewish diaspora fit with the larger history of Moroccan Jews? I know another big question, so I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yes,
Yeah,
Jessie?
I can. Oh, go ahead, Ikbal.
Please go ahead.
Well, I think one thing I kind of want to bring into the discussion is the term diaspora, which is sometimes conflated with the term exile, especially in like academic circles and historically in different liberation movements, including like Black liberation movements across the Americas in particular, has, you know, kind of particular thorniness, I think, when you start to speak about any Jewish community, because there is, right, the term of exile kind of in a religious sense in Judaism as well. So that's why I find it hard to engage with any discussion, or not engage, but to sort of have a conclusive response to anything that asks about sort of a singular set of characteristics to a certain diaspora. So I do think when you talk about any Jewish community, Ashkenazi, Sephardi, wherever they're from, you kind of have to have in the back of your mind that for some folks, there might, you know, there's people who call themselves, right, diasporous Jews, right, which is a way to say that like a Jewish person who believes that it's, you know, ordained to live outside of what was biblically Israel. And so I think that's one thing to just sort of keep in our minds as we move forward. And also, you know, I think to your question, Natalie, about like, what is, if I understood correctly, kind of like what about the diaspora today inflects how we understand Moroccan Jewish history? Is that what where the question is?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I would say, you know, bringing it back to something I brought up before Ikbal was able to join us, which is that, you know, there's a whole political economy and now behind the way we talk about, study, preserve Jewish histories. And I think an important part of that to always keep in mind is like, how do Moroccan Jewish actors outside of the state of Morocco engage with these projects, and how does that affect how we narrate that history? Like, is it narrated as a what we might call, coming from Natalie's discipline, a neo-lachrymose history? Like there was only one way for Jewish history to go, and it was to be not to end up to have a forever home in Morocco? Or is it the opposite, to sort of emphasize just this, you know, beautiful coexistence across different communities in Morocco for millennia, you know? Or is it something in the middle, which I think most of us would say it's more in the middle and very contingent on where you're talking about and what time period. So I guess I would say that that would be the way in which I believe the diaspora inflects how we talk about Moroccan Jewish.
Thank you.
I think that just adding up on what Jessie has said, I think that a lot of Moroccan Jews are returning to Morocco, like, and it's not only just merely about religious tourism, which I guess we're gonna talk about later. But a lot of Moroccan Jews are really interested in coming back and reconnecting with their roots, uh, be it through music, as is the case for some Moroccan singers, my Judeo-Moroccan singers like Natalie Bernstien or Renata, who have been doing a lot of research about their roots and the music they grew up listening to, or the language that their grandparents who were Moroccans, who came from Morocco, like uh, just the nuances of the culture that the Moroccan culture that they grew up around. And I think that we can say that in the past few years, a lot of Moroccan Jews would come to just visit, as I said, for religious tourism. But now it's not just about that. Now it's more like um, visiting to, yes, for religious reasons, but also to reconnect with the roots and to invest in Morocco. A lot of projects are being developed, a lot of cohorts are visiting, a lot of political decisions are being made with both governments to facilitate this coming back, if you may call it so.
Yeah, no, that's a great transition, because I definitely wanted to talk about this idea of the annual pilgrimages, so otherwise known as Haylula. So I guess for those who are with us on Zoom who might not be familiar with these annual pilgrimages, can either of you explain a bit about this idea, its history? Yeah, just for those who might not know.
As a Moroccan, like growing up with the idea of a Hilula, all I knew about it is that it's the anniversary of death of a tzaddik, or of the tzaddikim in Morocco, which means the Siddiqin in Arabic, the saints. And it's like an occasion to remember these people and all their good deeds, and go there to seek their barakah, to venerate them, especially if we keep in mind that both Moroccan Muslim and Jewish people venerated the same saints, be it in the major cities or in the hinterland of Morocco. And I just remember that my grandma there was this salih in Tinrep, and to which they would go when they have fever. So this tzaddik is really known to have cured people's fever, and they would go there and take a horn from the sheep, something like a shofar, and they would fill it up with water and just go pray to the tzaddik, and then they pour that water on their big toe, and then just sprinkle some wheat there. And people are still doing that, like, up to this day. And when I was asking, she said that all, like, the Jewish neighbors and the Muslim neighbors both went there, and that what matters the most in this case is the niyyah, or your faith, or what you really feel inside. So if you come to venerate the saint with a good heart, he's sure gonna grant you. And a lot of tzaddikim in Morocco are visited by Moroccan Jews and Jews in general from all around the world. You'd be surprised the distance that people travel to celebrate the Hilulas. And during my work with the High Atlas Foundation in Morocco, I was really privileged to attend a lot of Hilulas in Morocco, and just see how people come back every year because they believe that the tzaddik granted them their wishes. So Jessie?
I'm so glad Ikbale is here, because she is much more the expert on this topic than I am. I think I would just add that, of course, the existence of pilgrimage sites is not only in Morocco. You can find them throughout North Africa, Southwest Asia, even actually Eastern Europe, even though folks sort of assume that Ashkenazi communities did not have a similar veneration system. It's actually more of a question of whether or not rabbis got rid of the practice, rather than whether or not it's solely related to one community of Jews. And yeah, I would just add that to me, it's interesting, there's quite a few projects popping up trying to provide kind of digital archives of Jewish history and sites, especially in North Africa, Southwest Asia. A really interesting one is called Diarna. And I was just looking at it this week to kind of get ready for our webinar. And it was interesting, like a lot of the saints who are not in the southern regions of Morocco or like south of Casablanca, I would say, or south of Fez, were actually not included in that map. And for me, that leads to really interesting questions of like, who are leading these projects, like who has access to this information? Why isn't someone like Sadia Adeti, who's a very well-known Sadiq in the Reef, for example, like on a website like that, or even Amram Ben Divan, who's very well known from Asjan, from Bouziane. So you can get to really interesting questions about, as we start to see a proliferation of interest and institutional support for thinking about and preserving Jewish histories, what histories maybe don't get the privilege of being included and why, I think are good questions to keep in mind.
I think that Professor Omar Boone from the University of California, Los Angeles has been working on, voicing the margin, and he's been really exploring the Jews of the remote places of Morocco in all of his books. And I think a lot of work is being done to highlight these marginalized histories and to answer like questions related to why would we like shed light on some histories and not on the others. And especially, given the background of, it could be because of wealth, because of being centered in some specific geographical places, or being less spoken about because of a lot of reasons. But I think that in Morocco, a lot of efforts are being done and a lot of action is being taken, especially by the civil society organizations to do this, and individuals as well. I know that Michael Sixu is like a Jew from Agadir, is working on this beautiful historical project. He's making posters of the history of Morocco, the history of Jews of Morocco, and it's really interesting. And because he's also visiting, like along with the Hayatollah Foundation, visiting a lot of cemeteries and places in that depict the interfaith Moroccan heritage, religious ethnic minorities sites, and working on a platform that's going to be an open access to everyone to look at these places and get their geographical location, visit them, and like hear more about the stories that people have there. And I think that as Moroccans, we should put more effort into exploring our identity and listening to more stories. Because this is the most enjoyable form, basically, and I am a bit biased because that's what I'm working on, but I think it's the most enjoyable and informative way to learn about oneself.
Yeah,
Can I
go ahead, Jessie?
Add?
Yeah.
I'm so glad Ikbale brought up Michael Sixu, because I have his map somewhere, but it's not anywhere close, so I can't show folks. But it's really an incredible. He has like 3 sets, and they have different themes, and it's an incredible piece of art, I would call it. And I just wanted to add on to what Ikbale was saying. I think something important for me is not to sort of isolate Jews from the folks that they live around and have lived around in Morocco and the rest of North Africa. I mean, like, part of the reason I would, hypothesize that we don't know that much about, or we don't see that much written or shared about Saadia Adati, for example, or Leila Mimouna, who's also in the Reef region, is also because Reefi history, right, in general, is yet to be fully maybe studied or paid attention to with the type of institutional support we might see elsewhere in Morocco. And yeah, thanks to folks like Omar Boom and other, professors working both inside and outside of the region, I think we're being told to really make sure that the margins are not a secondary thought and maybe actually our primary kind of concern.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think that's a good reminder that even the term Moroccan Jewish history is so broad because it very much depends on which part of Morocco you're looking at, which community. So I think that's definitely something helpful to keep in mind. I am curious, I know Ikbale, you mentioned that you've been to Helula before, and Jessie, I'm curious if you have as well, and if so, what did this look like? Like, what was this experience that's when you went?
Well, I'm not sure I got the name right, but I think it was the Hilula of Davida Levi in the Minette. And it was a very spiritual experience. And you know, things as a young person, I did not grow up knowing that such things took place. You know, I would see the Hilula in the afternoon news and like flash news. There's Hilula in Essaouira mainly, and that's the only one I knew about growing up because it's closer to where I was born, to Agadir. But just being there and getting to experience the Hilula with the people who traveled all the way, who made the trip. It's really the idea of pilgrimage with all of its um, um, all the connotation of the connotation and the meaning of the word. As Muslims go like on pilgrimage to Mecca, for example, it was as intense because I saw people depart into Mecca, for instance, and uh, there was something different, but you could sense that the spirituality was present and that people uh, really are really connected to their roots, and that trip to visit the Tzaddik is not merely about visiting the Tzaddik, but it's about the community, about meeting the people, about catching up with new people. I was with Isa Janini, the Judeo-Moroccan filmmaker, and we were on a trip to like which she's working on her last film, موثوق الخميس Delgara. And while she was making footages of the film back in 1994, she went to a hilula that happened to take place in the geographical location in which she was making the film, and she ended up catching up with a cousin from like 20 years back who had came from Canada, you know, specifically to attend the Hilula. And I think that these encounters that happen during the Hilula are very important and very crucial to the survival of our memories together, like as Jews and Muslims, because when you might meet the neighbors of your great grandparents, you might hear stories, you're gonna go back with like spiritual batteries recharged, but also with a lot of knowledge and a lot of um, stories and a lot of important things that are gonna make you certainly wanna come back and re-explore again.
I'll just add, I also try to comment a little bit on Micah's excellent question in the Q&A. Diasporist Jew here as well. I would say I haven't had the privilege of attending a Hilula in Morocco, but I have attended the ziyara to the Djerba synagogue in Tunisia. And I think similar to what Ikbale is saying, I mean, it's an incredibly emotional experience. I remember it kind of broke open my idea of these firm categories that kind of we have to fight against in our academic work of Ashkenazi, Sephardi, Mizrahi, Amazigh, you know, what do all these terms mean? How do we contextualize them all? I remember when attending the ziyara at Djerba, I was concerned that I shouldn't participate because I'm Ashkenazi. I didn't think that I had the right to participate, in all these Tunisian Jews who were there with me and Tunisian Muslims were like, you're so silly. What the hell are you talking about? You know, like, you know, people have been attending this pilgrimage for millennia and they're from all over, from many different types of backgrounds, Muslim, Jewish. I even remember somebody arguing that Zoroastrians used to attend the pilgrimage. So I think that it's like Ikbale said, it's a really important moment to sort of break open any sort of hardness, when we write and talk about these category, these adjectives to describe folks, to kind of break open whether or not they mean exactly what we're thinking about. And I think the pilgrimage sites in general for folks who are interested in Jewish history also serve as an important reminder that Judaism is not monolithic and that it's really important to question, especially I'll just speak for myself as a Jewish scholar, to kind of question what I think Judaism will look like from my assumptions and my experience to what you can discover when you study communities from across the world.
Thank you. Another helpful reminder. Ikbale, did you want to add something, or?
I was just looking at Mika Wilson's question. So I read the whole paragraph. To what extent is this work having a tangible impact, and what is that impact? I'm not sure I can fully answer your questions, but one thing I know is that one of the hilulas last year in Morocco coincided with the month of Ramadan. And since you mentioned earlier in your paragraph, like how the binary of Muslim and Jewish brought up, I think that was a very significant, especially last year, like a lot of religious, be them Jewish, Muslim, or Christian holidays, like spiritual holidays, coincided and happened in like a very similar time or at the same time even. And Morocco, especially in the Jewish and Muslim case, a lot of Moroccan officials attended the Hilula and for the inauguration of the ceremony and everything. And I still remember like this TV report on both Muslims like praying and Jews praying at the same time, to break the fast and to celebrate the spirituality of the whole movement in a synagogue. And that was very it's an exemplary situation, especially in the context of Middle East, North Africa context, as Jessie was saying. So I think the impact is gonna take some time. So it's not like an instant result of something. And since we're talking about human beings, my hope is that a lot of more efforts will be put into actually just getting rid of this binary, because when we talk about binary oppositions, it's not necessarily a positive thing. And yeah, that's it.
And maybe
I
I'll
would like to chime in, since we are approaching the end of our webinar, but I did have a question of my own. You both spoke about Morocco's institutional efforts to rekindle the links with the Jewish population. And my question is, do you think these efforts will eventually lead to this population getting back to what it once was in Morocco?
I can start. Well, I can tell you just from fieldwork experiences that I was very surprised, for example, this summer, meeting several Moroccan Jewish families who have always been coming back to Morocco, like even though they might live in France or Canada. Like I'm not sure it's totally new that folks are being able to visit Morocco. Maybe the ways in which they're visiting and the openness with which you're hearing Hebrew in particular is a little different, but I did meet several families this summer who have decided to permanently relocate to Morocco. I caution attributing that solely to these, efforts of institutional support to rekindle or to preserve or to highlight a long history of Jewish presence in the country. But I think in kind of, also returning to Micah's question as well, like it's certainly plenty of scholars have encouraged us to be vigilant about the difference between a large NGO with maybe funding coming from a EU perspective or something like that, giving money to preserve a site and actual Moroccan Jews and Moroccan Muslims in particular being able to also appreciate and learn about that history. So I do think it's always important to kind of like have one eye being like, are these projects for Moroccans? Are they for all Moroccans? And are they being accessible? And like, are you seeing, for example, at Moroccan schools, history being taught in a different way so that Moroccan folks who attend public schools can learn all about both Jewish and Muslim histories across the country. So I guess my short answer to your question, Miriam, would be, I think you can certainly quantify certain results of this institutional support, but I'm not sure if we can ever say that any sort of movements back or increased connection among Moroccan Jews to their homeland is solely a result of those efforts. And I always like to point out that like these movements and really grassroots efforts to preserve Jewish history in the region did not begin with the government support. They began with like community members and the families that are taking care of the cemeteries and have been taking care of them for generations. People like Ikbale has already mentioned, Dr. Boom or Mohammed Kambib, or different scholars who have also been doing their part. So I always like to note that I don't think it begins with the government, it begins with folks and people doing that.
Yeah, I think that is totally a grassroots kind of change to be initiated by the communities and by the people. And I think that the government can really do a great job if they try to facilitate people's understanding and encourage their curiosity to investigate these topics. Since, as we know, in the Moroccan curriculum, there needs to be some modifications to make it more inclusive. And I think that starting with that would actually make a significant difference in changing in realizing this paradigm shift from people just thinking that only Muslims live or have lived in Morocco, and highlight this interfaith existence that has always been the case in our country.
Thank you both very much.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, this has just been great, and I definitely have more questions, but I do think, like you said, we are about out of time. I just wanted to thank everyone joining us on Zoom and on Facebook. It's been an honor to be part of this conversation, and I just wanted to open it up to Jessie and Ikbale if they have any other final thoughts.
I think there's a lot to be said about this topic, and I think that Morocco is a very fertile soil for new discoveries, and if there's one thing we should really focus on is highlighting stories and histories from the margin, and because there's a lot to be discovered there, and it's about time to start doing so.
Would you like to add something, Jessie, before we close it off?
I would just like to say, also search for maybe the contradictions in a lot of these, projects and movements, and sort of understanding that individuals can benefit from this sort of resurgence of interest, but also we should always be critical of other motives maybe involved in these projects as well.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you both for the closing remarks. Thank you all our speakers and our moderator for being here today and for your great insights on this topic. And thank you to our attendees on Zoom and on Facebook. This has been a great webinar, and it's going to be saved on our Facebook page and added to the webinar section of our website. So this has been a great webinar. I hope to see you all, our speakers and our attendees, on the future webinars. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you.